We are still dealing with the unforeseen enemy, COVID-19, while the country awakes to the realization that our nation is not equal for all. As family members of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, we are overwhelmed and saddened by the recent horrific acts of violence and police brutality against African Americans and other people of color. We stand with those who fight for equality and fairness in the delivery of vital services to those we love, support, and on whose behalf we all advocate. Can we just say, I don't know, whatever, amen, not ourselves, I don't know. May it
Amen.
end, may it all just end soon, all of it.
Okay.
And now I'd like to thank everyone who has agreed to participate in our Zoom adventure. In our virtual room, we have Sue Constantino, wave, from CP State, or whatever you're calling yourself now, because I can't remember that.
That's okay. CP State works just fine.
Thank you very much. Steve Taller of AHRC.
Hi, everybody.
Linda Schellenberg from Center for Family Support.
Hello.
BJ.
Arnold Ackerley and BJ for Sannies.
Hello.
I didn't see Arnold, but I'm sure he's there.
I'm here. Hello.
Okay. The other members of New York City Fair Steering Committee are here too. Mary Krasner, Lou Turo, Randy Bolton, Jim Karp, Lynn Decker, Marion Resnick, Michael Bolton, Rachel Kivanowski, Carlene Braithwaite, and Janet Turo. And then I'm turning it over to Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary Krasner, another founder of NYC FAIR, and it's my job to outline the rules. This is our second virtual forum, and the goal is to create an orderly and respectful format with sufficient time to cover the proposed changes to the home and community-based waiver. We have scheduled 90 minutes for the meeting and will strive to maintain time controls. The noise you hear behind me are people cheering for the nurses and doctors who live all around me. I'm in a hospital zone. We have scheduled 90 minutes, as I said. The meeting will be recorded and available for future viewing. If you do not want to be recorded, please turn off your phone and audio and just listen, and mute if on the phone. First, we'll hear short presentations from our speakers about the amendment proposed to the HCBS waiver. Following that, the moderator, Carlene Braithwaite, who might wave at us, will follow up with questions, including those that were submitted online. You can also ask questions and add comments in the chat session at any time. We're monitoring the chat. Hopefully there will be time to ask some of these questions, although some can be answered right in the chat box, and someone will endeavor to do so. There should be some time at the end for live questions, which will allow people participating on the phone to be heard. These questions will be limited to 1 minute, and then you will be muted. And please take turns speaking if you both start at the same time. This will only work if your phone or computer is on mute, unless you're asking a question at the end. If you're on the phone, use *6 to mute or unmute. Your cooperation is appreciated. And now I'd like to hand it over to our moderator, Carlene Braithwaite.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all can hear me. I hope you can't see me, but it is so good to be here with all of you today. I will follow the order and the rules set forth by Ellie and Mary. So we try to give a voice to everyone. We're here tonight to try to figure this thing out. The guidance is 400 pages long. And so we're trying to cut through a lot and educate ourselves and walk away with something useful. So without further ado, I think what I'd like to do is just briefly introduce you to our presenters, many of whom you already know, but just in case. So we have, in no particular order, Arnold Ackerley. Arnold, raise your hand. Arnold started his career as a direct support professional over 20 years ago. During that time, he worked in a variety of professional roles. In 2017, he began serving as an administrative director of the Self-Advocacy Association of New York State, known as Sannies. BJ Stasio is here with us again. BJ, good to see you. He's the president of the board of directors also of Sanyes. It's a position he was elected to by his fellow self-advocates. And he's also been employed by OPWDD for 20 years, working on person-centered planning issues. Susan Constantino is the president and CEO of CP Unlimited and Cerebral Palsy Associations of New York State. Since 2004, she has delivered services to a membership network of 24 affiliated agencies across New York State, with a career spanning close to 40 years advocating for and working with those to enrich the lives of those with disabilities. Linda Schellenberg. Linda is the Director of Community Services at the Center for Family Support and their subsidiary, CFC Self-Directed Supports, which is a fiscal intermediary. Linda participates in the FI Provider Network and is involved with SD advocacy efforts and issues. Last but not least, I see Steve Towler. Steve is currently the VP for Programs and Business Development at AHRC New York City chapter. He has over 30 years of experience in the development of employment and training programs for people with disabilities and at-risk youth. In addition, Steve has extensive experience in employment services, and he also has experience with an array of HCBS waiver services, including support of those in OPWDD day programs. Okay, let's move to our questions. Now, when you registered for us, many of you submitted questions. And if you know this format, what we did was we went through those questions and tried to distill them so that we can present them here to, and they can be answered. And so I'd like to start with the question that I think is on everyone's mind. And so when we saw this waiver amendment come through, it came through as a surprise, May 31st. It has a 1-month comment period. So all our comments, if we choose to do so, will have to be at OPW by July 1. So first, to dissect this, I think a good place to begin is because there are various targeted services, as some of you may know. So you can group a large group of those have to do with supervised residential services. So I'm going directly to Susan, and I'm going to ask one of the $64 questions. First, Susan, help us understand, I guess, the billing situation for these targeted services. So we're talking about occupancy, vacancy rates, therapeutic days, okay, retainer days. Those 3 tranches, could you tell us a little bit about how they work? And then just give us a first briefing. I know we'll get into this in more depth as to how this amendment would affect those services.
Thank you. Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I'm sorry, I'm not really happy. I'm sorry we have to talk about this. This was a surprise to all of the provider associations as much as it was a surprise to you. We meet with OPWDD at least 2 times a week, and they never mentioned anything about this to us that they were doing it. So this is a new OPWDD that we're dealing with. That's not the way it generally works. Let me start, if I can, with vacancy days in the IRA program. As a lot of you remember, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, we got a new rate methodology that's called rate rationalization. And when they gave us that rate, they took away something that we had for years and years, which was called the appeal mechanism. So if somebody in your agency, if you had a vacancy, if you had an empty bed for a long time and it created a problem with your money that you had because you weren't getting paid for that day, you could appeal it. Or if you had someone who was in the hospital a long time, you could appeal it. But under the new rate methodology, you couldn't do that. All appeals were gone. So what was created in there, and it's the same thing when you say vacancy days or occupancy factor, it's the same thing. What we had negotiated with OPWDD when they put these rates in place was that we would be given a factor, and in this case, it was anywhere from 0.1, 0.01, all the way up to 5%. A factor would go in that would raise your rate a little bit so that if somebody was out, you were getting paid for it in the rate structure. And for most of the agencies, on average, you usually run vacancies at about 2%, 3%, it depends. Now, currently, right now, after this COVID piece, people are going to have a significant problem because, again, unfortunately, we've lost many people, and there will be then a number of vacancies. People say, why would they pay you for somebody not being there? Why do you need that? No one's there. But the truth is that when no one's there, we still can't reduce staff. We still have to pay the rent. We still have all the utilities. You know, maybe the only thing that might go down a tad might be food, but not much. So you still have all of your expenses, even if someone is not there and you're not getting paid for them, which is why the vacancy factor was there. So that factor has been important to us. They calculate it out. We get a form that we have to fill out every year. It tells them how many vacancies you have. It tells them, because they're very clear, these would be people, you know, they want to make sure that they're vacancies that they would ordinarily have to pay for. And then you get, when you get your new rates, you get the vacancy factor put into that. So what this is doing is this is saying we want to eliminate the vacancy factor. There will be none. Now, they also control, OPWDD controls how people come into your agency. They send out to all of the providers, these are the people who are on the priority 1 list, and you have to review all of those folks to see if they fit into a vacancy. But often you're given, you know, a 21-year-old or a 25-year-old individual who may have certain behavioral issues, but your vacancy is in a home or in an apartment where you may have, you know, people who have been with you for 30 years and they're older, and they do that. To bring somebody in like that would create issues. So you may say no. So OPWDD kind of controls who you get to look at, and they control what you get to do. So that's why this is bad. Therapy days, just to go real quickly, therapy days are days that the family, that individuals go home with their family or go on vacation with family. They call it therapeutic leave. And we have currently right now, people can go home whenever they want. The agency still gets paid. They go home for weekends, they go home for whatever. The agency gets paid. What they're suggesting to do is that for these therapeutic leave days, there would be 96 days of therapeutic leave when an agency would get paid 50%. And on the 97th day, the agency gets nothing. So 96 days to go home with your family, to go on vacation, to do whatever you want. As you know, if you have anyone living in a residential program, that's open to what you want. What would happen here is that, again, it still would be open, but the agency would not get paid for that. So that's the therapeutic leave day. The third is what are called retainer days. Retainer days are the days that somebody's in a hospital or a nursing home. Now, again, much like the vacancy, when somebody goes into a hospital, you still have all of everything. You don't let staff go. In fact, it takes more staff because you may send staff to the hospital with them. If somebody needs to go from the hospital and they need to go to a rehab center or a nursing home for 3 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever, and then come back once the staff has learned how to do whatever a new process might be. Currently, right now, what we get is 14 retainer days times the number of people who live with us. It used to be just 14, and then the 14 would be over and you would get paid nothing. Currently, right now, it's 14 days times the number of people who live with you. But what is being proposed is that it would go down to 50, you would get paid only 50%. So every day someone was out, instead of getting 10,000, you would get 5,000. So that would be the way that would work. I'll stop there because I know my time is up for now, and I'll wait till questions.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. That's been, that explanation is invaluable. And I have read some of the 400 pages more than once, and in a little over 5 minutes, you've made it much clearer. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
I would like to move to, I guess, the second largest concern here that we can see. Steve, there's a provision in here about ComHab. And while it's not a rate setting provision, what it seems to do is at least it talks about some guidance that will come out and how apparently that guidance will apply to determine in the future the level of service going forward. And it's of obvious concern to us. Could you explain, I guess, the ComHab landscape now, how that level of service is computed and figured out? And could you explain, if you have a crystal ball, what you think OPW is up to?
Okay, well, thank you, Carlene. First off, from a full transparency perspective, I just want to let people know, a lot of experience OPW, involved in ComHab to a degree, not an expert in ComHab, but I did speak to our expert tonight to get everything as current as we could from an AHRC standpoint of what we know and what we believe to be in the waiver aspect of this. So I think the big thing that kind of came out of, and as Susan mentioned, the provider associations have done a lot of analysis on what they have so far, and the biggest impact of these cuts do appear to be on the residential side at the moment, and the CCO cuts that were kind of known and planned to take place. Related to ComHab, what we're kind of seeing, it appears that the changes are not so much for the current people, but more for new people coming in, and that the service authorizations reductions in services would be for new people into the system, or not for new and not for the existing folks, but really for new individuals to kind of do some reductions there. Over the years, and more recently, with the new commissioner OPW, they have kind of raised in a couple of different forums concerns about feeling that some ComHab was being delivered maybe more than it needed to be. So those reductions and some controls on there, I don't think are all that surprising. For anyone that's not that familiar with ComHab, and I gather a lot of people really are, clearly it's an HCBS waiver service, OPWDD, really there to kind of help people develop and enhance skills needed for more independent living, in their home, and so that people can be assisted. I know there's very specific questions that were kind of being asked about the mechanism piece related to the billing. Right now, it's quarter-hour billing, which isn't a lot of fun, but it is one of the standards in the industry right now for being able to do that. The envision for the process for community HAB billing is saying that part's not going to change. But clearly there is a new assessment in development that the sense I'm getting, it's a three-pronged kind of process, but that it's not really three-step review, process to provide efficiency and consistency across determination of how many services and hours people are going to need. So the example I had got, so right now with AHRC New York City, we provide ComHab support to about 500 people, all right, that are at home. And even through COVID-19, we've continued to provide a tremendous amount of in-home services. About 65% of the people that had been recently receiving services are continued to receive it through COVID. And now we're getting more families asking us to come back in. There was a time when some of the families were making decisions that they really weren't comfortable with people coming into their homes, and that's very, very understandable. Kind of with that, but we are seeing more and more people looking to come back. So on average, it kind of looked like what was an average person getting right now. And typically it's about 4 hours a day, 3 days a week. So the thinking is clearly that into the future, there'll be less total service hours awarded to people, and that there's going to be probably a harder line, because that's where the reduction would likely occur. All right, at least that's what our take on that aspect of it is. Proposed waiver amendment doesn't, self-direction is a separate question. I'm not going to get into that, but it doesn't appear to be any changes to the self-direction component either. And I don't know if Susan, if you have anything to add that you might feel was kind of in that mix on ComHab.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is just that it has been a problem for the commissioner and a number of other people at OPWDD, the number of hours that people were getting for ComHab. And you know, ComHab is used also for people who live independently in the community. And so I think that rather than saying, as Steve said, rather than going into the people who are getting it right now, they really are looking at who will be new, and they're using it as a consistency method. Like, let's make sure that New York City doesn't give out more ComHab than Buffalo or whatever those regions are that they have. And that's how they're playing it. But I think it's really limit the number of hours that people coming into the system will get. That's how we read it, Steve, for sure.
Right, and I agree. That's how we saw it as well. That it's not going to impact people that are getting it right now, but it's going to be having the system really have a much carefuler look into the future as the determination of what people should receive, what they need, how that'll be structured. But it doesn't appear that there's lots of other impact at the moment, unless this assessment tool really turns out to be a real problem.
Right, right.
Okay, thanks for that, Steve and
You're welcome.
Susan. Linda, before I move forward with some of the questions, I guess because ComHab services are delivered, of course, to families in self-direction, are you at all concerned about what you're seeing here? Even though I assume there is no impact, is that what you're reading? And what are you seeing? And what are your feelings about this?
Yeah, from what we're seeing, the proposed changes in the waiver amendment do not target self-directed ComHab. And OPWDD did say that during one of the provider association calls. However, I would appeal to you all to make sure that you do share your feedback on the waiver amendment, to make sure that they don't include self-directed ComHab, because there's already a review process in place. There's already a budget planning and person-centered planning done, and then it does get reviewed by the DDRO, so that's already there. And the individual and family do have budget authority, so.
Okay, understood. Okay, so while I have you here, I guess there is a component here in this waiver amendment that would directly affect self-direction, Linda, and it has to do with the provision and reimbursement to families for transportation services. Could you explain that to the audience and how that would work, and also tell us again, share any concerns that you might have?
I don't have too much detail on the specifics of what they're requesting. I do know that there's a very extensive transportation element in self-direction as far as reimbursing anyone who is supporting the person to travel, and also reimbursing the person directly. So I'm not sure, I apologize, Carlene, I didn't see that in the question there. So I'll have to look more specifically at that, but that was not something that we were more focused on, making sure the ComHab levels of service weren't going to be impacted.
I think the change might have been, I'm not positive, but I believe to kind of clarify how transportation, where it went, and to move it to an individual goods and services, IDGS. I don't know, but that's kind of the.
Yeah. Oh, so the
Yes.
currently transportation is a component within IDGS, as well as bundled in with the ComHab service. So including it in IDGS, I'm going to make an assumption that they want to really further define how transportation is in the self-directed budget. But yes, in IDGS, that is already available, that people can be reimbursed for providing service-related transportation.
Okay. I saw something, Linda. We will look for you. If you see anything, please get back to us. I believe they had something in there about, I guess, not double dipping, so that if the family receives transportation through, say, another program that they're in, a day program, then they cannot use nor bill under the IDGS.
Yeah, and that is already available. Yeah, that's already available guidance. So maybe they're trying to really further define it that, a person in self-direction cannot get transportation to and from their day hab program because transportation is included in that as well.
Yes. Okay. So before we drill down in a little further into some of this, we have BJ and we have Arnold here. Gentlemen, could you help us out? Is there any concern that you see here that we need to keep our eye on and that we need to factor into any comments we give to OPW or any advocacy we decide to pursue?
Yes, my advice as an advocate would be just be aware when changes come out and keep advocating and keep speaking up, because things could change at a moment's notice with OPW, to be honest about it. So just stay aware, and everybody keep advocating, keep speaking up, and just make sure they know that we're all here, and we might not agree with the changes. Just make sure they know that we're all here and we want what's best for everyone in New York State, families, individuals, and providers, everyone, because the system needs to be more person-centered and more available to everyone.
Agreed.
So,
thank you. Yes.
Arnold, do you have anything?
Yeah, sure. So I think one thing important to consider is the potential unintended consequences of the rate changes, because so provider organizations, they all have missions and they're trying to accomplish good work. But when you create financial stressors in an environment, right, it can create some unintended consequences. So I think when you're talking about the well, take for instance the vacancy rate, reduction in and of itself. When you're looking to fill vacancies, there's already a certain amount of pressure to do that in a timely manner to mitigate the loss of revenue. But what happens when people are working in good faith is you're always trying to find a fit, right? So in the interest of the person that needs a service, and in the interest of the people that are always residing there. So let's say it's 6 people are living somewhere. You want to think about the 5 that are already living there, and you want to think about the 6th new person coming in, and you want to know that there's a fit. And that can take a very long time sometimes. So this creates a new pressure to just kind of do that quickly. And I think the pressure is going to be greater depending upon the financial position of the individual provider organizations. So, I think looking at those unintended consequences and how they actually can really affect people's lives on the ground is really important, aside from just sustainability of services and continuity in the service sector in and of itself. The other thing is limiting therapeutic visits to 96 days again. That can create pressures for people when they're coming in or even when they're there. I know that, so sometimes people have very strong family relationships, or they have, a tradition of going away every summer for a month or things like that, And if you're trying to bring someone in for services and you're hearing all of these things and you're adding in your head, instead of listening to the life they want to have, you're calculating the number of days they're going to be gone every year, right? That's not really in the person's best interest. So I think those are things to really think about when you're looking over this document.
Appreciate those comments. And I think that we have some questions you'll see further down that highlight what you just said, Arnold. Unintended consequences, or hopefully unintended. But we will dig into that a little bit more.
So I wanted on the fiscal end, kind of connecting what Arnold is saying, the New York Alliance did a very preliminary analysis of what they think that might mean. And the 2% was kind of the target numbers, I guess, that, OPW was looking at a while back. and finding a way to get there. But their estimation is that for some organizations, this cut could be closer to 7 or 8%. You know, and that does have a huge impact on an organization's ability to provide quality services and to be able to pay staff properly. Those are some challenges. I would agree with what you are saying there. It could be some unintended consequences that will be really very problematic.
So your points are well taken. So instead of circling back around to this, Susan, do you have anything to add to this? Because I guess when several of us were reading through this, this is some concern, it's great concern on the impact of these rate cuts on all providers, but particularly some providers who may be less able to absorb these cuts. So whatever you could add, we would greatly appreciate.
Of course. I think one of the problems is, as Steve said, the original piece was that we were supposed to get a 2% cut across the board. It meant everybody got 2% on their programs. The OPWDD had determined that an across-the-board cut wasn't a good thing to do. So what they looked at was another way to save the dollars that they needed to save. However, this particular piece actually saves a lot more dollars than what OPWDD had first talked about. But the real problem is if you are a provider who supports people who are very medically fragile, if you're providing homes for people who really end up going into the hospital a lot because of the significance of their disability, you are going to be impacted totally by it. And if you're not, if your agency happens to not do that, then you won't feel the impact as badly. So what we really see is that this is in fact going to negatively impact a certain group of people. And again, when we talked about unintended consequences, you would never, and I don't think that, you know, usually providers look for, as Arnold said, they look for good matches so that people are going to live together well. But if all of a sudden you're finding that you cannot take people who are in the hospital a significant amount of time, and yet that's what they need because that's who they are, that's going to create some real fiscal difficulties for you. We've also been very afraid that as agencies may have many vacancies, in another way that they might go about thinking about how to eliminate that so that they're not going to lose a lot of money is really perhaps to just close houses, to put people, to have folks living in moving people to appropriate vacancies, and then maybe just closing houses. And that would have the unintended consequence of course, taking beds offline so that families wouldn't have the ability when the time came to look to these agencies as a place to go. So we really think that there are a number of things that will be very negative. I also really don't believe that an agency would ever tell a family, no, you can't take the individual, because obviously that we all believe that that's what you need to do, that family life is really important. But the agency then is going to be looking at half of the money. What are we going to, on those days, what are we going to do? It again, it puts us in a fiscal situation we don't want to be in. And we're already, most agencies are in it already just based on the fact that we haven't had any increases in such a long time. And now to put this in there is just something that we think it's unconscionable because they didn't talk about it with us first to say, how does it look? We don't know what kind of analysis they did, but I know that certain agencies, I know one agency that will lose $7.5 million on this particular piece. And an agency can't take that for a very long time. So I think we are putting the agency's health, the health of the agency in jeopardy, which means that it will have an impact on the people that we support, which is not what we want to do. So this is really, could be really damaging.
Thank you, Susan.
Mhm.
This is, I'm sort of speechless here. This is even a little worse than we thought. We were beginning to get there the closer we looked at this. But here we are.
Yep.
So let's just keep moving through some of the audience questions. Steve, I guess going back to ComHab, you know, the guidance talks about consistency and I guess equality. Do you have any idea as to what they will be using? That because they haven't produced the guidance, there is a concern that it won't be applied consistently, that and that there won't be sufficient attention to level of need, and so that individuals with similar levels of need are taken into account. If I have more need, I should have more services. What are you hearing? I think you shared part of it with us, but whatever else you can share with us, you know, we need to know. Steve, I think you have to unmute yourself. Yeah, sorry.
Ooh, still on mute.
Still muted, Steve. Sorry.
Steve, you're still muted. Yeah, okay.
Unmute myself, right. Now it's getting extra key. How about now? Right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right,
Thanks.
there we go. Sorry about that. So the DDRO will implement a clinical review tool, all right, which doesn't really specify, to my understanding, to formulate a 3-step review process to provide, like you just said, consistency and efficiency of decision-making and fairness and equity of service authorization for community HAB. Only for new people, right? Only new applicants to services, not those currently receiving the services. So it's the development of a tool, a 3-step assessment. It does not sound like it's the CAS, to our understanding. Don't really have a lot of details on exactly what the clinical assessment will be, other than that it's in development. I don't know if Susan or others have any input on or knowledge about exactly what that assessment tool would be. But I think those are fair concerns. You know, how well can it really be monitored and assessed, and are there the resources to do it well?
Understood. Could I ask, I'll reach out, Steve, to our audience. Is Tom McIlvaney or Jim Moran, are you in the audience?
Actually, I have a lot of knowledge of this, and I'd like to address it really quickly.
Who is speaking, please?
This is Ralph Warren. I'm a self-advocate, and a lot of you guys already know this because I know a number of you were on either in or participating, viewing the JAC meetings back about last fall, essentially. We'll target the fall. They have had in the works this under development since the fall, so we should be able to ask about it. They may not give it to us, but we should be able to ask about it. The other thing that's very important to point out with this is that they reinstated Community First Choice, which has its own watered-down assessment system involved with that. So I think that should be addressed as well. That's all I'll say right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Much appreciated.
Carlene?
Yeah. Yes.
This is Linda. I just wanted to speak on some of the experiences we've been having currently. So some of the regional offices have been asking questions, and I'm just wondering if these are the kinds of things that they will put in some sort of assessment tool. One of the things that they look for with ComHab is there a skill building component that's part of it? For example, if somebody is really utilizing the service primarily for personal care assistance, then they might say, go apply through, through your local Department of Social Services for personal care or home health aid. If they see that the support is to give primarily to give relief to a caregiver, they might say respite might be more suitable. So I think that as folks are going through the front door process, it would be important even now for new families and existing families seeking to make changes to clarify what the service will be provided for. So is there a skill building component? Is there a skill maintenance component? So I think if we're using that language, then we're justifying the request for community habilitation. And not all families know that when they're speaking to the front door personnel. So it'd be important to have that information as you're going through the process.
I think that's a good point, that it's a habilitation service that they're looking to pay for through this service.
That is
And-
very, very, very important, Linda. I apologize, I didn't hear. Do you have, through self-direction, is there any written guidance we can look at? Maybe you could send us.
So for self-direction, it's still community habilitation. So it's the same, same service type. It's just the person is choosing to self-direct. So it's still habilitation, but in the community habilitation, ADM does talk about skill retention and maintenance. And of course, there can be a component of personal care assistance that's provided throughout, but the primary goal has to really be of a habilitation nature. So yeah, but as far as self-direction is concerned, I think what we are finding, even though this amendment doesn't necessarily talk about the review and assessment process, what we are finding that is happening anyway. So people that are requesting higher hours, some of the DDRO offices, and because all of the offices do things slightly differently and they look for different things, that's another nuance here. We are finding that they're asking for a justification. They're looking, some of them are looking for schedules, and they want to know what will the staff be supporting the person to do. So again, I think in general, both for self-direction and for agency provided community habilitation, you want to just make sure when you're doing a plan and you're planning for the services that are needed, that you ensure that it has those components of skill building, skill retention, and the personal care can be sort of secondary to be, for the service to happen. Personal care can be part of it, but shouldn't be the primary focus.
Understood. So moving back, Steve, staying on ComHab just a little longer right here now.
Sure.
And just to make it clear to everyone, these amendments would take place, be effective on October 1.
That's our understanding.
So with your understanding of where parents are now, could you just give us a brief on how this affects or might affect folks who have ComHab now? And then how it would affect folks who may be in some sort of limbo, waiting, and those who may be up for an additional, another assessment coming up in, say, 3 or 4 months or something like that, because people will want to know how it affects them.
Okay, so our understanding is that you're right. October 1 is the target date, and things happen sometimes and things get delayed. But October 1, is the goal, I gather here, for the implementation. For existing people, there's not supposed to be any change at all to existing people. That their services for people should continue and be really uninterrupted. Related to future assessments and additions to service, I gather there's always the potential that additional screening or assessments could take place, even with existing people. But our understanding is that the proposed changes really only apply to the new applicants for ComHab. So will they treat that as a kind of a grandfather status? Perhaps, I know maybe Susan or Linda have some knowledge on that. Our understanding really is it's for new people, not so much current people in the system.
Steve, I have no knowledge of anything other than what you said, but my best guess would still be that, yes, when it first starts, it'll be an assessment for new people. But as people, as they have to be reauthorized for the service, I'm going to guess that after a period of time, everyone will go through it. I don't think that they will do a grandfathering. Again, I don't know that. I'm just going by what we hear them say and how much I know that they do not like having ComHab have to do any real personal care. And so I think they would look at that very carefully when somebody needed to be re-upped to make sure, as Linda said, that it's not written as part of any major piece of what you would want from ComHab, even though it would be done incidentally. But I believe they'll look at that very carefully.
Can I also
point.
add to that as well?
Sure.
We have been providing ComHab for many years, and with taking OPWDD's lead with providing person-centered supports, we have been trying to move people out of certified settings into their own apartments with the use of ComHab. So we do have people that are receiving higher amount of hours of ComHab because it is replacing the residential setting, which in essence saves the state money. It is what we find is it's very difficult to parse out personal care. So if we're the provider of the ComHab and we have another provider, it just is very challenging to support a person in their whole life, right? So that is a challenge. And my concern is that by them whittling down the amount of ComHab, we're finding a way to whittle it down. I agree with what Susan said, that I think it will impact everybody. So I do feel strongly that people should voice their concerns. If the state really wants people to move in a more individualized setting, don't make things more challenging and difficult to do that. And if the state of New York is going to pay for personal care on one end and ComHab on another end, just because they're different state agencies, it's all the same bucket of money that's coming through the Department of Health, right? So I would advocate for them to consider including personal care in the service so that we're not having to do this play of words. We do TBI services as well. And within the TBI waiver, there is personal care so that we as a provider can provide personal care. We don't have to go to another entity. So I'm sorry to put that out there, but it is something that does concern me, and how the impact of how this will take shape for future people.
I think you're absolutely right, Linda. I agree 100%. And again, particularly for those folks who are living alone or living independently now, it's an important service. So I agree with you. We really need to push back on this for sure.
Arnold, I just wanted to add something to what I think Susan was saying about the possibility of them eventually looking back at people. My understanding, and I can't be absolutely certain of this, but my understanding of what they mean by, one of the things they mean by equity is looking at people with similar needs and trying to ensure that those people are receiving similar budget amounts. So, it would seem to make sense if that's one of their motivations, that there might come a time where they want to go back and take a look and see and sort of rationalize the way people have been historically funded, aligned with what they're doing currently or in the future.
Understood. Okay, well, thank you all for that. That clarifies this considerably. Much appreciated. Perhaps not directly in this amendment, but we received several questions about other related services that may or may not be impacted. So while we have you here, would appreciate you weighing in on these. And I guess the first that came up is respite. So some in our audience were concerned and asked, would respite services be affected by the changes to the waiver? Has there been talk about retainer payments for respite providers? And would these changes affect respite? And whether you know about that or not. Steve.
Yeah, we provide a lot of respite services in New York City and outside New York City. In-home, freestanding, recreation programs, after-school programs, camping services, and best of our knowledge, there are no changes to respite services in the waiver. That's the way we saw that, and hopefully we're right on that. Related to the retainer payments, initially respite was going to be added into that service, and there was a lot of discussion. They were even in one of the PowerPoints was coming in, and then was ultimately determined that respite is not part of the retainer program. So this is creates a challenge, quite honestly, from a respite provider perspective, because right now respite services are very challenging to provide. We are providing some, but nowhere near the level that we typically would be doing. After school programs are not really taking place. We're doing some things virtual, remotely, Those are really for city-funded programs, not OPWDD. And it's just a challenge not to be able to have the retainer day as part of the respite piece. Respite's a very important service that we really want to get back to be able to provide. And right now, there's some limits on what we can do with that. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything on the respite side.
I just wanted to make a plug for the rate, the respite rate and the ComHab rate both had not increased to take into account the minimum wage. So, you know, it really put a great pressure on us as providers to be able to continue. And I know for us, we are taking a loss in our respite programs. And then the second point I wanted to make is I've always found it, and I still see this language in the amendment here, that it specifically says respite care is short-term basis. And many of us as providers and many of you as families depend on respite long-term, meaning you get it once or twice a week. So it's not short-term. So I feel like that language to me always didn't sit well. So that's something that, you know, I've always, whenever I speak to somebody about respite and advocacy, that if they want people to consider the reality.
Excuse me, Linda. Could you guys check and mute yourself if you're not speaking? We can hear you. Thank you very much. Continue, Linda.
Yeah, I just to wrap that sentence up, they do want us to look at different types of services to maintain your loved ones at home, and respite is an important component. It's you know, providing you with relief. So if somebody, what we find a good scenario would be somebody receiving some community hab and some respite, you know, blend of those things. So again, the language of short term never really sat well with me. So I just wanted to plug those 2 points.
Okay.
Good, very, very good point. And the cost item is a big one as well, because these costs came down and they were standardized across the regions, and it is very challenging to make the respite rates work. So if there's anything that can be done, I don't believe typically the rates go into these amendments, but if there's a way to support and advocate for them, that'd be very, very helpful.
Understood. Thank you very much. Okay, so 2 more areas here before we move on very quickly, because we'd like to get into some of the questions perhaps in the chat and certainly open the mic up. So I guess we wouldn't be able to leave without, there was a question about day services. I guess, Susan, if you could just give us a brief overview of where we are with day services. I don't think day services are necessarily directly affected by this amendment, but we did get several questions about it. So we didn't want to leave tonight without just saying something about it for folks.
Of course. And I would suspect that everybody is concerned about day services in terms of what's going to happen. Are we going to open? When are we going to open? How is it going to be when we open? What's going to happen? I think the one thing that we do know is that while we have been closed, there have been a lot of creative, wonderful things that have gone on, both in our residential program, and hopefully some have been able to spill over into homes, so that people may not want to go back all the time to day program. What we're trying to do right now is, number one, look at how would we do this? How would we do busing? How would we get people back? And we were speaking with OPWDD. We had a meeting with them earlier this week, and we will continue to meet with them to talk about it, so that we want to be sure they don't put any crazy guidance out there that won't really work. And so everyone is coming together to say what would be the way we could do it. Agencies are having meetings with their families, because we want to know how families feel. Now, your individual has been home with you for a couple months or more, and have any of the things that people that the day programs have been trying to do to support families, have they been good, or have they, what's the need? So we need to find out from families what else needs to happen. but some people will be very nervous about sending someone back to day programs. So we have a lot of work to do, and we need your support in terms of your ideas and whatever on how we can do it. We do know that the folks who are living in the residences, many of them want to go back to day program because they want to see their friends, and I suspect it's the same if they're at home. So what we have to come up with is what are creative ways for people to get together, maybe not in there, maybe it's day hab without walls, maybe it's something different, maybe it has a different name, maybe it's going someplace for a course or something in terms of like ceramics or photography or whatever, but maybe not the whole day. I mean, there's a multitude of different things that we can think of and that we've been pushing out to OPWDD on ways that we might be able to look at structuring and funding a program that would give people many more options, and options now that they've come to really like, that they've been doing some with, but also what do families need, so that families can either, go back to work or can at least feel like, their son or daughter is out doing something that they really love to do. So this is going to take us a little bit of time, but we're working on it. People are definitely working on trying to get this to work, and to look at how we do it in our homes, so that, or in our day programs, excuse me, so that we are still socially distancing, and finding the right mix of how to bring people together. I don't know, Steve, I'm sure you guys are looking at all that too.
Yeah, no, we're looking at it from an agency standpoint. We're spending a lot of time thinking it through and how these services get delivered, and the retainer day really methodology is allowing us some time to kind of get there with it. In the 80-20 split on services, we're getting fairly good at remote service delivery, virtual services, and developing a lot of really interesting and good curriculum materials to be able to assist people in continuing and to improve in areas of their lives that they're choosing to. But there's challenges, it's challenges that came out of nowhere to everybody, and now scrambling to try to make it work. One of the really interesting things that's happening, particularly with the different associations, and for the city area IAC's taking a real big lead on it, is kind of reimagining what all these day services look like. And day hab and pre-voke and employment, and how do you kind of put it all together to support somebody into the future, and what are these new service designs, what are they going to look like, and really looking to get, as Susan said, input from families and everyone involved, all the stakeholders, as to what is this new reality going to be for everybody. How are we going to deliver these services, how do you get people from point A to point B, what does it look like when you get there, how many people can be in a location. We have to reevaluate from an agency standpoint, all the property, the leases, and everything else. So it really is a tremendous undertaking right now, and one that we're all busy working on, and looking at new ways of really developing and delivering services into the future. Because at least for the foreseeable future, it looks like we're not doing anything as business as usual. Really, everything's different. So, work in progress. A lot of effort going into it, and you're really seeing the whole state, all the associations working very closely together and pulling people together, and kind of, we have a number of kind of subcommittees and groups kind of looking at DAHAB and pre-voke and how do they blend together, without walls, with walls. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening.
And most important,
Hello?
don't blow the opportunity. We don't want to blow our opportunity that we have now to change. Now's our time for all the things that we want to do differently. We don't want to blow this opportunity. We really want to do it, and do it well, and really listen to what people want. And this will help us to be more person-centered, I'm sure. But now's the time to suggest it.
Right, everything from
Hello?
making it easier to get
Understood.
services,
Yeah.
and easier to move from one service to another. And it may just be a service that people can get, and it wraps around a number of things, right? Everything from ComHab to what we've known as day services, and just kind of how to meet people's needs differently. So as Susan said, it's an opportunity. We're trying to make sure we're all kind of being really creative, and not just trying to change the color of a form, but really kind of change services so that they really better meet people's needs. So it's an opportunity, major disruption in our world, and it would be a shame if we don't take advantage of it in a positive way as well.
Understood, Steve. Thanks for that. And just to interject here before we move to the next questions, a few in the chat. In the future, New York City Fair will be having another one of these town halls to address the reopening and some of these issues that Susan and Steve and Linda, Arnold and BJ have been talking about. That is, how do we structure, what do we need to think about as we begin to reopen and move back to what will be our new normal. So you will see an announcement about that. But before I open the mic, I don't want to totally ignore the chat. As you might imagine, there are a few questions coming in. So not to take us too far afield, but trying to stay on point here to what we're talking about tonight. Guys, the presenters, I'd like to know, do you see anything in here? There's some concern that there might be some cuts or at least some impact on CCOs in this amendment. Is anyone seeing anything?
There's a big cut for the CCOs or is in here. I think it's about a 15% cut. It was something that OPWDD had told us about early. It's supposed to come now at the 2 years where they had started money and additional money to get going. So they expected that there would be some cut, perhaps not as much as what there is, but that is very definitely in there.
Okay.
Hello?
Hello, yes?
Yes, I have an idea. I am
Hello? If you could hold your questions, we will be opening up the mic just in a second, okay? So we have a few more in the chat. I'll be brief. I'm getting a lot of questions about some of the issues here and whether we can see any help in, I guess, the process for appeal. You know, certainly that's not necessarily something that you want to think is your sort of kind of like your last effort sometimes. But we are getting those questions. So what about the fair hearing process, the appeal process? Is there any information on how we should think about that as we have to address these new cuts?
Well, I don't mind coming in here. I guess what we would be asking or what we would recommend is that that families really reach out, and you can put a statement out, or you can answer or have your comments for the state register, because all of those have to be looked at and they all have to be answered or taken into account. So if you feel that this is going to have an impact on certainly we would be able to do that, and we would be happy to share with you the response that the NIDA, all the providers as one organization, have put out. So we would be happy to share that with you too. It would be very good to register your concern with both OPWDD and the governor's office, so that they know that this is something that families are very concerned about, that these kinds of cuts could be harmful. And anything that you as a family member have to say is really, we believe, hopefully really taken in with great seriousness. So anything that you can do would be excellent for that.
Okay, that is speaking to advocacy, and that was my very next push, Susan. I appreciate it, because you've moved me right into the open mic. But I think that certainly we here, I think in New York City Fair, will be looking to post some information on advocacy tools. I do know I was on a care design call this morning. I know that certainly the CCOs are taking a look, as I'm sure IAC and the providers are looking. So we will try to gather this information. Ellie can correct me if I'm wrong, and Mary, and get it out to everyone on the call. Certainly, as Susan has just said, this is a comment period. So you have until July 1 to write, to send emails to OPW. The information, I think, is on our website. If not, we will certainly get it to you where you can submit those comments. And that is one thing you can do. But there may be other folks you can write to, some of your representatives. We will get all that information together. Certainly some shorthand tools for you to use. And, you know, if you have any more questions, on the impact of these cuts, we look for you to tell us about it. And so I guess with that, we have a few minutes, more than a few minutes left. So we have about 20 minutes. So I'd like to open up the mic. I know I cut someone off. I apologize. I can't tell who this is. It does say person with an idea. Person with an idea, are you there?
Yes, I am here. My name is Karen, and I'm advocating for my two sons who have autism. And just real quick, in hearing all this, I believe that they're basing the ComHab comparison on reaching goals by the LOC that's provided by the care managers. However, the care managers don't know what they're doing, and they do it wrong, and they don't even understand the goals themselves. So we have to be careful to make sure that they're done properly by someone who knows how to do them. And number two, if they're looking for more specific goals for ComHab outside of the house, it could be like enrichment programs designed towards different types of disabilities so that they could reach their maximum goals depending on the disability they have. Just a
Okay.
thought.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes it's hard for me to see you. So is there someone else out there who'd like to ask a question? I think you can unmute yourself and just speak up.
Hi, I have a question.
Hello?
Yes, Beatrice, is that you?
can-
I'll take, Beatrice popped up first, so I'll take hers first and hopefully get to the gentleman I'm hearing in the background. Beatrice?
Okay.
Hi, my name is Beatrice. I'm the PTA president for 596, and I also have 3 kids with disability. My question is this. So with these cuts coming up, the self-directing system that OPWDD had, is that going to be affected as well? And what are some of the things that we as parents can advocate for? Because I know that most of the parents that want to see their kids get these services are not even getting the correct services for their kids. Some of them have to wait on a very long list before they even get the services, and they will be outgrown that services, and some of them have the same goals that was set up for like 12 years ago when they were still in the system waiting for services. So I want to know, how do we parents advocate for the right services and for the right programs for our children?
Okay. Steve, Susan, would you like to take that question?
I'll pick that one up for a second. I'll kind of use a couple examples if it's okay. So, you know, in each borough in New York City, I don't know what borough you live, but in each borough in New York City, we have a DD council, Developmental Disability Council. Oftentimes, and obviously being part of New York City FAIR is one where you're advocating as well. But you could also on a local level, depending on your borough, get involved with those DD councils, and you have an opportunity to normally sitting around talking with people. Right now, a lot of it's gone virtual into Zoom meetings, but the meetings are continuing, and we're getting to kind of hear and listen. You get a good platform, you have an additional set of ears and eyes to kind of hear your issues and your concerns, you bring it to the table. And I'm going to give you a little example. What we're doing in the Bronx, I'm co-chair of the Adult Day Service Committee up there. And in the Bronx, transition's a huge issue every single year. And I noticed that it was on one of your topics here too, on eligibility for services. So each year, you know, particularly I'm focused on District 75, anywhere from 250 to 300 students would transition out of school. Given COVID-19 right now, obviously that transition process is really in a major pause, quite honestly, because one, students are not at school, they're at home from that transition perspective. Issues related to CCO enrollment, front door, getting through OPWDD, making sure all the evaluations are taken care of, all those things. Families have a lot of concerns, you know, is my son or daughter going to get the services they need? It's a place to kind of get that voice going. Collectively, the eligibility issue, I'm going to tie another issue together with eligibility. Citywide, it's being addressed with the DD Council, so you get your voice there. Letters been written to up to state ed, looking to see whether or not students would have an option to stay in school an extra year. So, you know, depending on what that issue might be, getting involved gives you a chance to have that voice. And we certainly need all the voices possible to help fight these potential cuts, not even potential, they're cuts that have been already proposed. And there's other, I saw some of the chat box questions, is this the only cut coming? And I think most people think probably not, given what's happening with COVID-19. So we need advocates. So getting involved at multiple levels is a really positive thing to do.
Thank you, Steve. Okay.
Yeah, hold it.
Who is speaking?
Okay. I'd like to go next then. I want to address Karen's point also.
Who's speaking?
Well,
I'm trying to get in. My name.
Go ahead. Why don't let this guy go?
Okay.
Okay. So I got two comments that I want to make because I want to refer back to the individual, the person with the idea speaking about the LOCs.
Could you give us your name, sir, so we know?
Al.
Okay. Thank you, Al.
Yeah. Okay. So the person with the idea mentioned the fact about the care managers not having any knowledge about doing completing LOCs, when in fact we know from the days of beginnings of everything when MSC was here and now care managers, it was never a MSC function for the care manager or the MSC to be doing anything like that anyway, because they're not clinicians. But you know, that's neither near here or there. My main question is the fact that Susan made a point, and you asked the question twice that you said you would get back to me. I'm trying to understand the impact that nobody's talking about, seemingly. I mean, a whole lot about programs, and programs will continue in this state because Como will do that eventually. How much that's going to be, we don't know. Nonetheless, the impact on the cuts that's being made to CCOs right now is devastating, and I would like to know what the community is talking about that, because if it was all set up under the Amendment 1915A to do this for individuals, and nobody's talking about all these cuts that's coming down the line for CCOs that provide this service, is it a point of view, Susan, that nobody cares in this state about all these cuts that's coming to the CCOs that actually deal with the individual we serve every day?
I don't believe that people don't care. I believe that the only reason why you don't hear as much about it with the CCO cut is that the CCOs had been told right from the beginning that that was going to happen, that there was going to be a cut, that for the first 2 years they would get higher rates because they were starting up, because they needed to hire staff. And if you think about it, the CCOs, there's 7 of them, did an amazing job in 2 years putting together everything that they've done. So I don't think that anyone is saying that. I think it's only that we knew that that was coming. It had been talked about. These other cuts, we didn't know they were coming. And so they've caught everybody like unawares, and it's like a hit to you because you weren't expecting it. We will be working with the CCOs in terms of them telling all of us as providers, as families or whatever, and we will advocate for them also. They're not forgotten at all, but not even a little bit. They did.
All right.
Yeah.
It's 16%, Susan, and that's a lot, because Como's not going to take all of them expenses. He can't afford what he got now with Medicaid.
You got it. Well, if the real problem is going to be if there's more cuts after this that no one knows about just yet, but if we don't get money from the federal government, there could be really deep cuts.
Exactly. Thank you, Susan.
Okay, so I'd like to get a question.
Yes,
I'd like to get a question. Go back to Karen.
Hello.
Sure. This is Ralph Warren again, self-advocate. So going back to what Karen said, it's really critical because I disagree with some of the speakers. The two options we have are not just skill building versus personal care. Certainly, even with the current life plan, staff action plan process, in the staff action plan, there is supports for people with autism and other people besides those with autism. We need supports that are adaptive to our various life needs. They're not just the narrow sense of skill building. So I have a question on that in a minute, but I want to point out something very important that's factual. Kate Marley on the webinar said that they are going to reinstate the move to CF, Community First Choice, CFCO. That means that everyone that doesn't have self-direction with full budget authority, their ComHab will go into the state plan. That is probably the only way they're going to save $100 million with ComHab as stated in the state register. So that means that people will be effective starting October 1st. You'll go into a new system for the people that have ComHab now. Everyone with agencies, everyone that has agency-based self-direction. So my question is, to Ellie and the rest of the folks at NYC FAIR, will you allow us to send you materials that we've sent before last year on this issue about CFCO so that can be distributed to people?
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Ellie is just weighed in. Sure, send them to us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Okay, I think there was a gentleman that had a question before and seated very graciously. Is he still there?
Yes, hi, my name is Robert Sparling.
Rob, yes.
I would just like to thank you for this. I'd like to ask if you could provide something to us who've attended collectively with a concise summary of the concerns that have been expressed, because you were articulating them and much more familiar with them than I am, to use as a basis of a personal letter that I could send to OPWDD, the governor, and my local officials. I already am familiar with them and do write on other areas, but as you said, the 400-page document is a little more than I could chew at the moment with everything else. So I heard some very well articulated concerns affecting agencies, and that filters down to individuals. My son will be 18 this weekend. So, I see what's coming when adult services hit, and I'm a member of a family support council as well. So I'm trying to stay abreast of it, and I appreciate this. And the more concise you can be, the more I can better articulate the needs and concerns to do my part. Thank you.
Rob, I think that's a very, very reasonable request and a very useful one, and we'll take it back. And you will see, when we recommend the advocacy tool, we will have the content there for you to use because we do need to reduce this. We've tried to educate tonight, and I thank you for that comment. So is there anyone else? We have just a few more minutes.
Question.
Yes.
My name is I have a question. May I
Yes.
ask? My name is Eleanor. It's to Susan. Susan, you talked about the vacancy days and the occupancy factor. I'm wondering, when you say the 96 days, does that harken back to the old years ago, 22 nights on the pillow, head on the pillow?
Bed.
I'm sorry, on the bed, right. So may I just add a little to that question? In other words, they could be with parents as long as they're delivered home to sleep on that pillow or in that bed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly right.
And just as an adjunct to that question, after the 96 days, what happens? What kind of protocols are in place for the group home to address the parents or yell at the parents or fine the parents, or what kind of protocols would occur?
Right now, there aren't any protocols. OPWDD has not told us anything. I would hope, and again, I can't speak for all providers, I would hope that the providers would just explain to families what it is, would ask that when possible to have someone back at the end of the day so you could have them home with you. But I can't imagine that there would be a provider that would say, no, you can't go now. On the 97th day, I'm getting no money. No, you may not take your son or or whoever out. If that were to happen, I would hope we would have recourse for a family, because that would not be what anybody would want to happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But it was good you remembered that, though. It was exactly where they got the 96 from, but it's 96 total, not 8 per month. It's like you got all of the 96. So if somebody was going to go away for 30 days, that's okay, and that worked out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question and clarification. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is there anyone else out there? I think it looks like we have time for maybe one, maybe two more at most comments, questions before we wrap up.
Hello?
Siobhan?
Yes. I mean, this may not be particularly wet, but I'm a parent waiting for community ComHab service.
Siobhan, I think you muted yourself by accident. If you could unmute, and then there you go.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know how I got invited to this meeting, but it's been enlightening, although I do not understand everything that's going on. I'm just confused with I'm a parent of a child who's not in school now. He goes, is not considered a day program, but a non-public school setting. And I'm just waiting for some community hab so it can help me with child, care for my son, because now with him being out of school, like if I didn't have a family member who has sympathy for me, I would be probably homeless because I wouldn't be able to have a job.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, whatever list that I can be on to advocate to extend services, I want to be on it, because this is crazy. Like, I just don't know how some parents operate, because I don't qualify for anything, because I tried to do the right things. I tried to save for retirement. I tried to save for a rainy day. I don't qualify for SSI. It wouldn't cover my maintenance anyway. And it's just unbelievable that they want to take away for something that's not even enough already. And that's all I have to say. And thank you for everyone on this panel.
Are you connected to a CCO? Did you have the services set up in that way?
Well, yes, I am connected to a CCO. I've been waiting. The person I think that I have who's I deal with at OPWDD, or that they deal with, it's horrendous. I mean, it's been over a year that I've been waiting for community hab services. I finally got approved after like about a year going back and forth.
Oh, that's awful. That is just awful.
I have to
and I can't. It's just like ridiculous. And I'm hearing you about they want to cut the CCOs. They want to cut this. They want to cut that. And then now I hear from this meeting that the people who come in to work with your children, are they not even receiving minimum wage?
Yeah, they are.
No, they are.
But the CCO is supplementing it, correct?
No.
Which CCO, do you know which CCO you're enrolled with?
Yes, I know. I'm with Care Design.
Care Design. Okay, well, let us put a note.
Yeah, we can.
Let me say one thing.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to say one thing, that by virtue of being here, you're going to get a lot of information, whether you want it, whether you read it or not. So the first thing that you did is you're here, and just keep make sure we don't end up in the spam folder. And we'll see you again.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I think that's. I'm hearing one. I have room. Okay, we have maybe one more brief question, because we need to wrap up.
I did send my question.
Okay.
I did send in my question. I want to find out what benefits or what program are they having for the parents that their adult individual children are not going to day program that we have to deal with. I have to take care of my daughter, and I'm working from home. It's not easy. It's very stressful while I'm dealing with her, and I'm still home. And I was told the public school, they're giving the public school children $420 for food for the parents for staying home with them. So what are they giving with the parents that is dealing with our challenged children? And the workers are being paid and they're not working with the kids because of what is happening. But with the parents, we are home dealing with our children 24 hours. What program, what benefit are they giving? What support are we getting as parents? Because if they can give the public school children each child $420,
wow,
why can't they give our children that are in their program something also to support, to assist with the parent that is keeping them at home?
okay.
Yeah, I hear, okay, that will be the last question. I see your question here on the list. I hear of it. I don't know to our panel. Nothing immediate comes to mind. I see you there, but we will please keep looking, as Ellie said, joining us on these forums. Please keep looking at our website and whatever resources that we have that we think can be of use to you. Once you've asked us this question, we will have it, okay? I can't think of anything right off. I don't want to start talking about stimulus payments. We all know about those. You know, that would take us a little far afield.
I'm just going to throw something out, Carlene.
Yeah, sure, of course.
This might be, you know, totally off.
No, I doubt it. You haven't been off 1 second.
No, I mean, the only thing I can think of, I think that's a very, very good point that I haven't heard, and it's so true. The only thing I can think of is to contact the day program and see if there's a way that staff can pick up food from one of the local schools that's distributing lunch and bring it to you, because we as providers, we can utilize our staff in that fashion. So if the day program is open to doing that, I would definitely say that's what your need is, that you have a need for staff to come pick up food from a school and bring it to you for lunch, because that extra expense was not something that you had previously.
I don't want the food. I want them to give the money just as they give to the public school children. The money, the cash money, or the money they put in the card, just as they give to them. So I know what I have to buy for my daughter. Because most of those food they give in the school, they are bread. They are not healthy. We're trying to help these children so that they won't put on weight. If you go to the school, they give to them, it's so much bread, sandwich. No, let them give the same amount of money they help those children in the public school. They should help our adult children also. Help our parents. Now they are not going to camp. I have to deal with my daughter. She's not going to go to camp this year. This is very stressful. I am tired. I'm exhausted.
Yeah. Understood. We hear you. Your question is here. I have heard about the payments which you speak, and we will look into it. If there is anything there, we will get it back to you.
Okay.
Okay. But please stay with us. Bear with us. We're a group of parents. We're advocating for all of our children. Each of us here has a child. Many of us have children at home. I'm speaking about myself. We're here with you. We're here for you, but you have to bear with us and understand that these are difficult times. And we just appreciate your participation tonight and your questions and your patience. So with that, I want to thank our excellent presenters. You've been with us, and I want to turn it back over to Elliot and Mary. And with that, please join us for our next forum. Take care, everyone. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Carlene and our presenters. Carlene was magnificent, absolutely. And so I want to thank you all for coming and for keeping us honest. And we'll be back. And I put in the chat for you to send in some ideas for our next meeting, because we know what we know, but we don't know exactly what you know. So with that, over and out, and let's keep advocating, because God knows everyone needs it. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. We will be sending follow-up information about where to write, where to call, and hopefully a very comprehensive and very simple to understand summary of the ideas that were raised tonight.
You will have that.
Yep.
Just
And
give
we're
us
meeting
time.
on Saturday, so you know we're not slouching. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
All right.